Alright, it's time to create the cluster. So to create this cluster, I want to provision the servers in my AWS account. So let's try to launch those instances. So I want to take Ubuntu OS to bring the cluster, and the version is 18.04. Select, and 1 GB memory is enough, because I told you, right? So with 512 MB RAM of servers also we can use to create the cluster. Okay, so I want to use this only 1 GB RAM, and I want to launch 4 nodes, because one is the master node and the other 3 are the worker nodes. Next, add storage, and 8 GB is more than enough. Next, add tags. So we'll add those tags later, and then configure security group. I want to attach a default security group, and then review all the options, and then click on launch. And I have a key pair with me, that is k3s cluster key. I want to utilize the same, and then launch instances, view instances, and let's wait for those instances to be ready. So we'll try to assign tags to those instances. So I want to assign this one as k3s master, and this one as k3s worker 1, and this one as k3s worker 2, and this one as k3s worker 3. Alright, let's wait for these instances to be available. Alright, instances are up and running. Here you can see 2x2 checks are passed. And now, instead of using SQLite or HCD, I want to use AWS RDS, which is MySQL database, to store the cluster information. Let's try to launch the MySQL RDS as well. Go to RDS console, and then click on create database, and I want to use MariaDB, because MySQL is not open source anymore, because Oracle purchased it, and the MySQL and MariaDB functionality level both are same databases. So that's the reason I'm using MariaDB. And here you can select the version. So I want to go with the latest version. So I don't want to go with any production options, because as this is a demo purpose, I want to go with the free tier usage. Right, so let's go and create the database identifier. So k3s cluster -db, and here you can see provide the master name, I mean the database master name, and try to provide the password as well. And repeat the password. So once it is done, so as it is free tier, so only 1 vCPU and 1 GB RAM is available. So this is more than enough for our demo purpose. And then I want to go with only general purpose SSD, and 20 GB is more than enough. And I don't want to have any storage auto scaling for this RDS. And multi-AG, of course, as it is a free tier, so multi-AG is always disabled. And in by default VPC only, I want to launch this RDS. And so if you go to the additional configurations, and backup is not needed. So if you want to uh, have backups for your RDS, then you can have this backup window. And auto miner upgrades also not required for this. And so finally, if we go, then click on create databases. All right, the database is creating, so it will take 5 to 10 minutes to be available. So let's wait for it. All right, the database is available, and also our instances are also available. Let's try to connect to these instances, and then we'll try to install the k3s cluster. Now first connect to the master node, get the public IP, and then go back to the terminal and connect to it. At the same time, I have splitted this terminal into 4 sections. So on top, I connected to the master node, and bottom I will try to connect to all the worker nodes. Right, let's copy the worker node 1 IP and then connect from over here. It's connected. And then copy the worker node 2 IP as well. And then try to connect. It's connected, and copy the IP of worker node 3 as well. And then connect at this terminal. So all are connected. So as a best practice, we have to update the machine initial time. So when you launch any EC2 instance, so it's always best practice to update the machine first. So let's try to switch to root user, and then apt get update -y. So it will update all the machines. All right, so the update on all the machines is completed. Then first we have to bootstrap the master node, and then we have to attach all these worker nodes to the master node. So first thing is we need to connect to the RDS, and we have to create a database to store our cluster information. So for that, I will try to install the MySQL client in master node, and then I'll try to connect to the RDS, and then I'll try to create a database inside the RDS. So for that, so I have to install MySQL client, apt install MySQL -client. So it's downloading. So in the meantime, grab the endpoint of the RDS. So this is the endpoint of our RDS. Let's copy it. Still it is installing the package. Let's wait for it. MySQL client is installed over here. Let's try to connect to the RDS. So the command is mysql-host. So the host name is, we need to provide the host name of the RDS, and then -u for the username. k3s is the master user of this RDS, and then -p. So let's enter the password. All right, so we have connected to the database. Let's try to see what are all the by default available databases are there. For that, show databases. As you can see here, we have the by default databases like information schema, INNODB, MySQL, and performance DB. So I want to create a database with the name k3s to store our cluster information, right? So flush privileges. I think spelling mistake. Flush privileges. Yeah, it's okay. Let's quit from this MySQL, and then let's go back to the documentation page. So here you can see the information. K3s supports the following data store options, right? So in this we have selected the MariaDB. So if you go below, so you can see the options like, so first of all we need to set an environment variable. So inside the master server, saying that, so what is your data store endpoint, right? So this is the data store endpoint for the MySQL connection string. So if you are using the PostgreSQL, so this is the connection string for the PostgreSQL database. So if you want to use the etcd, so you can follow through this documentation. So as we are using the MySQL and MariaDB, so first of all we need to export a variable called k3s data store endpoint inside the server. Let's go back to the terminal, and here export data point is equal to, and just grab the endpoint syntax over here. So we need to maintain this entire string in a single quotes and then paste it. So we need to modify this according to our requirement. So the username is k3s, and the endpoint is, sorry, the password is k3s cluster password, and then it's a TCP connection, and then we have to copy paste the host name, that is a RDS identifier. Let's go back to the terminal and get the RDS identifier. Just copy it and go back to the terminal and provide over here. So apart from that, so we have to modify the database as well. So here the database name is, we just created k3s, right? So this variable is exported, and then let's go back to the documentation page. And so when it comes to the master node, so this is the server configuration reference, and if you go below, some options are available. So first of all we need to execute this command, right, to download the binary and to install the binary inside the server, right? So copy paste it, and if you have any options, if you want to provide any options, additional options, like if we go here, if you go to end of this page, you can see the available options of this server bootstrapping. So I want to use write kubeconfig file, and then write kubeconfig mode as well, because when you install or when you create the server node or the master node, so by default it won't write any kubeconfig file for your non-root users, right? So if you use these options, it will try to create the configuration file for your non-root users, right? All right, let's copy these options, write kubeconfig, and then go back to the terminal. So here we have to provide an option called in capital letters install underscore k3s underscore exec. So those options we need to provide inside the double quotes, right? The option is hyphen hyphen write kubeconfig file is equal to /home/. slash ubuntu and then slash dot cube. So at this location, and then the other option is write cube config mode, and this particular option will assign the permissions, and then we need to provide the permissions 644, and also we can specify the name also. So at this location at slash home ubuntu, so just try to create the .cube file and then use the file name as config. So at this location, so the cube config file will be written. So let's try to execute this command. So basically it will try to download the k3s package, and then it will try to execute the binary, and then it will try to create the cluster with the master node itself. As you can see, the version is 1.17.4 plus k3s1, and as you can see the command execution is completed. Here you can see the systemd unit is started for k3s. Okay, so if you want to check the status of it, systemctl k3s status, I think it's a reverse command, status k3s. Here you can see it is active and running. All right, so if you check the nodes status kubectl get nodes, here you can see just now it is provisioned with the version is 1.17.4, and we have just used these options, right? So let's try to verify this. So write the cube config file at this location, and the permissions also. So if I exit from the root user, and then if I execute, let's try to check whether the files are created or not, ls-l, or else you can use ll command. So it will give you the hidden files as well. And if you check kubectl get nodes from the Ubuntu node, there you go, 12 minutes ago it's just created, and from the normal user also we can able to execute the kubectl command. And then switch to root user. Once the master node is completed, let's try to check what are all the namespaces that it is created. So default, kube system, kube public, and kube node list, the all by default all namespaces it is created. And kubectl get pods -n kube system namespace. All right, so all are running. So we'll try to validate all these pods and the daemon set later. So next we'll try to add all 3 worker nodes to this master node. So before that we need to understand so the files and folder structure which is created by the k3s. So if you go to cd/var lib rancher is the home directory for this particular k3s binary. So if you look at over here, it will create a folder here with the k3s. If you go to k3s, here you can see agent, data, and server. So as this is a server node, so if you go to the server, so here you can see the files, the manifest location and the DB location and TLS and then token information also. So this token is needed to communicate the agent nodes with the server node. So let's try to add all 3 worker nodes to the master node. Let's just try to grab this token first. So this is the token. Let me copy it. And then we need to export a couple of variables inside these worker nodes. The first one is export k3s underscore URL is equal to HTTPS, and we need to specify the URL of the master node, and sorry, not URL, the IP address of the master node. Here I want to use the private IP of this master node. So the IP is 172.31.14.30 is the master private IP, and then this API server of the Kubernetes is listening on 6443 port. So once that is done, we need to export other variables as well. This one is k3s underscore token, and this token is this one. All right, let's enter. The same thing we need to specify on all the nodes, because this is very important. So if you don't provide k3s URL and k3s token variables, then it will treat this machine as a server machine, and it will try to initialize a new Kubernetes cluster in the worker node itself. But if you want to add this node as a worker node to the existing master node, we have to export these two variables. So this is very important to keep it in your mind. So just try to execute those two variables on all the machines. The first one is the master IP, and the second one is token. On worker node 3 as well. So once it is completed, let's try to watch on the master node. Watch kubectl get nodes. So with this command, we can able to see how many nodes are available in the cluster. Let's go back to the documentation page and then grab the command. So the same command we can utilize, and then go back to terminal, and I'm executing this command on all the nodes. Just try to observe on the top screen. As of now, we have only master node. So once the execution is completed, this command execution is completed on all the nodes. Here you can see those nodes are added to this particular cluster. So as you can see, here the worker node 1 is joined and it is not ready yet, and the second node also joined and which is ready, and the third node is also joining, so because it's executing the command, right? So here you can see two nodes are added and they are ready, and the third node is also added and which is also ready. So this is how you can add the worker nodes to the k3s master node. All right, so the package, or sorry, not the package, the daemon inside the master node that is running as k3s, and but whereas when it comes to the agent, in the agent nodes it will try to run this daemon. K3s agent is the daemon. Let's try to check those service. System ctl status k3s agent. Here you can see the status of the particular service. This particular service will be up and running on all the worker nodes. So this is how we can bring the cluster with one master node and 3 worker nodes. So apart from that, so we'll try to connect to the database, and then we'll try to observe so whether this particular setup is using the RDS databases or not. So for that we have a command to connect to the database, right? MySQL, and use the same command and enter the password. And then show databases. And then here you can see this is the databases that we have created. Just use the database to check the content inside this database, and it is connected to this particular database. And if you see show tables, here you can see kind is the table. In this table all the cluster information is stored. So if you want to check the data of this particular table, so try to install any web clients, whether it may be MySQL Workbench or maybe any other clients that you can install, and you can connect to the database and you can see the data inside this kind table. All right, with minimum resources of our hardware, that is 1 vCPU and with 1 GB RAM on all the nodes, we could able to create the Kubernetes cluster. So this is how we can say this K3s is very lightweight. And so if you want to see the difference between K3s and other Kubernetes cluster, just try to give it a try. So provision maybe 2 or 3 nodes with 1 vCPU and 1 GB RAM, and then try to create the cluster using any kubeadm or maybe kops. So you will try to get some of the errors regarding the hardware is not having enough resources to create the cluster. So this is how we can say the K3s cluster is very lightweight. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this class. This is how we can create the Kubernetes K3s cluster for our development purposes. And nobody is using this K3s cluster in the production environment. Maybe in future, maybe we can see anybody can give their inputs or maybe the best practices to use this K3s cluster in a production environment. So that's it for this video, guys. I will come back with more advanced concepts and topics in the Kubernetes cluster. Thank you for watching, and stay safe, stay healthy. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.